Section 12.4, Singing Melodies. So a quick caveat here. This section is illustrating a skill that you will develop further if you take the ear training classes or any class called something like musicianship later on down the road. But I just wanted to give you a taste of this topic because it's really cool. This idea of looking at a piece of music that you've never heard before and figuring out how it's supposed to sound, both in terms of the timing and in terms of the pitches themselves. So I'm going to walk you through this method, and I encourage you to apply this method to any music that you're working on, and certainly any of the pieces in the back of the book. So we're going to begin by dissecting the rhythm of this example, and this should be almost second nature to you by now. So the first thing we're going to do is to look at the time signature and the rhythms themselves, and we're going to figure out an appropriate counting system. So here we are with good old 4/4, none of that crazy compound meter stuff. We're just back in something that we're very familiar with. That means we're going to have 4 beats in every measure, and the quarter note gets 1 beat, just like we would expect. The eighth note gets half of a beat, or 0.5, and so on. So looking at the notes, you don't even have to write all of the values on top at this point. You can probably eyeball everything. Already, you probably realize that we have a medium difficulty rhythm. We have eighth notes, but we don't have 16th notes. So that means our counting system, assuming that we're counting to 4 because of this top number in the time signature, our counting system is going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And this is where you can pencil in your counts below. And then you can very easily underline everything. This should really be second nature for you by now. So all of those are eighth notes. This one's a quarter note, so it gets 2 syllables, 1 per customer here, and then 2 syllables at the very end. And then at this point, you want to just try to execute the rhythm first. So here's how the rhythm goes. You can do this with me. I'm sure you can nail it on the first try. I'll give you one measure for nothing. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So pretty easy so far. You can also conduct in ta if you like. Now we're going to tackle the pitch a little bit. So I'm going to clean up a little bit of this annotation here at the top. We're going to look at the key signature next and figure out what the possibilities are. So we have 1 flat in our key signature. You should know immediately that you are either dealing with F major or D minor, so capital F or lowercase d. We don't know which one it is yet, but those are the 2 possibilities. Now, this is where we're going to play detective a little bit. We're going to look at the notes themselves in the piece to figure out if we're in the key of F major or if we're in the key of D minor. And believe it or not, you can tell this just from the notation. You don't have to hear the piece to determine whether it sounds happy or sad. You can actually look at the notes themselves. So here are some criteria to consider. If you're in the major key, they tend, at least a melody, tends to end on the first note of the scale, or the tonic, and they tend not to have any altered notes. That is, altered notes meaning accidental, so lots of sharps or flats in the course of the piece. So if this were in F major, we would expect it to end on an F and not have any altered notes. Now, in contrast, minor key melodies, they tend to end on their tonic, so the name of the minor key, and they do tend to have altered notes, particularly a raised seventh. You might remember that from both the melodic minor scale, ascending, and the harmonic minor scale. Sometimes they might even have a raised sixth note. So if we were expecting D minor, we could predict that it would end on D and perhaps have a raised seventh note. Well, the raised seventh note in the scale of D minor is going to be C sharp. So which of those 2 scenarios best fits our melody up here? Well, it ends on D and it has this altered note, that C sharp that we were expecting if it were in D minor. So indeed, we are in the key of D minor. So now that we've determined that, we're going to officially say that we are in the key of D minor by writing a lowercase d and then a colon after it, saying that we're about to analyze everything in this key. And we're going to next use our solfege syllables that we covered in the minor key chapter. And what we're going to do is to assign a solfege syllable to each one of these pitches. So we're going to begin by tackling this D. So in the scale of D minor, D is your do. It's the first note of the scale. E is the next note of the scale. We get may. Remembering that in minor keys, the third note is may and not me. It is spelled M-E, but we pronounce it may. And then you can figure it out from here. Re, mi, fa, sol. Going on to the next measure, fa, me, re, me, and then we skip down to do. Here we have that raised seventh note. So if you remember from the solfege unit in the minor keys chapter, the raised seventh note is T, and then back to do at the very end. So that gives you your words. And in the ear training classes, you'll learn how to associate these syllables with particular sounds. But I'm just going to demo these remaining steps so you can hear what you're after. So step 8 says conduct while speaking the solfege syllables in rhythm. So that means you're going to conduct a 4 pattern for this one, and you're going to practice just speaking the solfege syllables. So here's how that goes. I'll give you a count in of one measure. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Do, re, me, fa, sol. Fa, me, re, do, ti, do. So all syllables spoken in rhythm. Now, the last step is to conduct and sing. So you're going to actually produce pitches on those syllables, not just speak them. So what you can do here is, I'll see if I can bring my little tuner up to the microphone so you can hear it. You're going to play the note D. You can just get it from a piano or a tuner app or wherever, and that will be your tonic. That will be your do. Then you sing to match that pitch, and then you will sing the rest of the notes in the melody given those solfege syllables. So here comes a D. And so when you sing and conduct, 1, 2, 3, 4. Do, re, me, fa, sol. Fa, me, do, ti, do. So what we have at the bottom of the page is the slightly neater solution, but we figured out everything that's here above. So again, I encourage you to make use of this method with whatever music you are encountering.